What up, dog? Hola, mi gente. It's your host who in the neighborhood in the streets the most. J Hodge with In Your Hood, InYourHood.com. Now let me start off by saying this is another non-typical nightly edition that will be occurring from time to time, but will not be a normality in these news segments and in this news series. But this is another nightly edition, and welcome to another nightly edition of Hood Sites. Welcome to Hood Sites. Now, before we get started, let me plug you in to something you need to know. The Federal Open Market Committee, they standing firm on their position about inflation. But not only that, jobs created did not meet its estimation this week after it was reported. Jobless claims did decrease, but not at the level that was estimated. Not enough to say that the economy is at a sustainable recovering level. Also, payrolls, non-farm payrolls that was reported this week did not meet the level of expectations and the levels necessary for the economy to be consistent with the expectation and the signals of a recovering economy at a moderate rate, not a slow, but a moderate rate. So, what's being estimated is that, partner interruption, what's being estimated is that the economy is getting slightly better, but very, very slowly. And that inflation is still being very, very closely watched, but it is occurring. It is happening. Shortages are in, prices are rising. And so with that being said, the dollar that you spend will be and is currently right now as we speak being impacted. Because if this persists, then prices are going to continue to rise. If people are, one, continuing not to seek employment because job availability has increased. Whereas supply and demand, we have a oversupply of jobs that's available, but we have a under demand for people that actually want to fill and have these job positions that's actually available on the market, in the job market. When I say that, on the job market, that are in need of being filled. Wages are not rising, but some places have risen their wage per hour to attract future and potential employees to fill positions. But that tactic has not been enough to narrow the gap of the unemployed against the amount and the supply of jobs that's available. All of this affects the stock market if you're an investor, and if you are a consumer, it affects you and your cost of living. You do not want prices to rise and you not be aware or prepared to budget accordingly as a consumer and as an investor, to have a plan to hedge against what's possibly to come. So, today's news segment is called Dash Harris is doing the work to end anti-blackness in LatinX culture, Latino-Latina culture. Through her work in creating Negro, a docu-series about Latino identity and Latinx identity, Harris hopes to dismantle anti-Blackness in the Latino-Latina Latinx community. Continuing. The African diaspora gave much of the world a very layered identity. For centuries, the slave trade resulted in African natives being sold or stolen as slaves and transported across the globe. Now, black people reside in countries from the United States and Brazil to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Dash Harris, an Afro-Latina Latinx woman, understands not only her multicultural heritage, but also the implications and societal structure surrounding her identity. Through her work in creating Negro, a docu-series about Latino Latinx identity, and more, she hopes to highlight Latino-Latina Latinx existence and dismantle anti-Blackness in the Latino-Latina Latinx community. Harris, who describes herself as being from Planet Brooklyn of Bed-Stuy, remembers her hometown before mass gentrification transformed her block right before her eyes. The brownstones may now be unrecognizable. However, she remembers her vibrant and upbringing in the Bureau rooted in cultural pride. A quote by Dash Harris herself. I grew up in Brooklyn. It was a huge Panamanian community and a black Panamanian community who have always been proud of being black, she tells the griot. So my context was always proudly black Central American. That was what it was. It wasn't a journey you had to take or an epiphany. Nothing like that. Continuing. Her docuseries, Negro, a docuseries about Latino-Latina Latinx identity, began production in 2010 and, according to the official website, explores the history and present attitudes of race, color, self-identification, and social interaction among Latinos, Latinas, Latinxes from Latinxes, Latinos, Latinas themselves. Harris began her series in Brazil while on a trip for Carnival with her best friend. At the time, Harris was a journalist and frequently carried a camera. During their excursion, a local resident, a black man paying extra affectionate attention to her travel partner, answered her questions about being black in America, in South America. A quote from Miss Dash herself. This fine Brazilian guy was trying to get my friend, and he was just talking to her for too long, she describes. You know what I mean. Even if they're fine, you have to go and be like, what's happening here? Harris continues. He was engaging my friend in racial politics talk. And I'm like, this is interesting because everyone's partying. Why would you talk about this right now? He was basically saying that he was extremely proud that Obama was the president. He was like, I identify with him. A black man as president? I was like, oh wow, interesting. So I started video recording the conversation. And I asked him, is being black in Brazil bad? He responded, being black is bad in the world. He was drunk, but he was really articulate. I think he probably has said this a lot of times. This was my first video. Negro is a passion project funded by Harris. Her friends, family, and supporters who understood the importance of the work. Through the docuseries, Harris aims to combat many issues, and Black people speaking Spanish is at the forefront. Her own childhood was plagued with people questioning her allegiance to Blackness when she spoke Spanish. A quote from her again. I can't speak for people, but my aim is to widen people's scope of Blackness because, as I mentioned, Blackness was thriving and, not living in its best life because we were enslaved. But it was existing in what we know as Latin America, 100 years prior to the U.S., she explains. My aim is to broaden people's scope of what Black looks like and sounds like. I often say that people will accept a Black person obviously speaking English, a Black person speaking French, even a Black person even speaking Dutch. Suriname and whatnot. And a Black person speaking Creole or Patois. They have a hard time accepting a Black person speaking Spanish to this day. Continuing. And this is an Instagram post that's cited in the article. And it's actually embedded in the article. And it reads, this is her caption. Her Instagram is Diaspora Dash. She can be followed. Her caption reads, the father of Black history was a Puerto Rican. What if I told you that the modern day Prince Hall, number 38 Mason Lodge, was entirely Spanish speaking prior to 1900? And the person who was integral in making the switch from Spanish to English was a Black Puerto Rican who was the pioneer in the collection and archiving of Black history in the America and beyond. If you're talking about Blackness and not talking about Latin America and the Caribbean, you ain't talking about shit. End of caption. She continues, Blackness has different languages, different textures, and my Black experience is not universal, and that's okay. There's space for many different Black experiences. Continuing. Through her own experience, knowledge, and communications with others, Harris knows that although some communities are anti-Black, many Black, Latino-Latina, Latinx people across the world have not only shown pride in their Blackness, but remain diligent in the global fight for equality. Another quote. Black awareness, consciousness, and even movements are not new to Black Latinos. Just because one does not know about them does not mean it's not happening, she tells the Griot. Latin America is neither behind or lagging as it relates to organizing around an Afro-descended consciousness. Folks who don't speak Spanish or Portuguese are prone to saying these inaccuracies because of that language barrier or because this is a topic that is of new interest to them. We are not new to this. We are true to this. End quote. According to the multimedia talent, this holds true for current Black Lives Matter and anti-police brutality uprisings in the United States. Another quote from Dash Harris. Black and Afro-Latino, Latina, Latinx have been doing their own organizing for generations, but in this current iteration have shown extreme solidarity with U.S. Black people. It is our struggle as well, says Harris. When they are doing their own marches and protests, it is to demand justice for their very own Black lives that have been systematically targeted and marginalized. Afro-Colombian social leaders are systematically assassinated, and just this past month, as they were marching in Bogota, they are seeking justice for Anderson Arboleda, who died because of police baton blows to the head and was tear gassed right at his front door. She adds, there are many others whose murders have not seen justice throughout the American continent. We were just circulating a petition to reopen the case of Austin native Javier Ambler, a black Panamanian whose death was ruled a homicide. Yet, none of the cops who did it were charged. We face the same white pathology and have always and will continue to stand together. Beyond the docuseries, Harris hosts a podcast, Radio Gania Negra, where she, along with two co-hosts, discuss issues related to black people of Latin American descent. The podcast team also hosts workshops, most recently at Stanford University, targeted towards white Latin Americans with the hope of overcoming white supremacist ideologies and behaviors that have been normalized throughout the generations. Another quote: there are white Latinos, Latinas, LatinX people. There is a white ruling class in Latin America. Folks always default to Latinos being people of color inherently, and this is just not the case. She explains. It actually perpetuates, absolves, and allows white supremacy to flourish in the region by pretending that Anglo-white is the only dangerous, violent, genocidal brand of whiteness. The white colonizers that put themselves at the top of the pigmentocracy in color and racial hierarchy didn't magically disappear. They left their white descendants that to this day hoard power and marginalizes anyone who isn't like them. End quote. She concludes, for anyone confused about this, simply Google any of the leadership, politicians, or even just turn on Spanish language media. The white supremacist power dynamics that comprise the U.S. are the same power structures and systems that rule Latin America. End quote. Dash Harris also runs Afro-LatinX Travel with a partner, hosting trips abroad for eager guests who desire to experience new cultures firsthand. End of article. So again, the title of today's news segment, Dash Harris is doing the work to end anti-blackness and Latino-Latina Latinx culture. Woo! Cultural identity. Cultural moral values and principles, which enables you to identify cultural challenges, issues, and constraints and come up with cultural creative solutions, which creates cultural advancement and progress and a cultural legacy that can continue to be sustained by other generations in the culture. Dash Harris is an embodiment of every element that I mentioned on this news segment on Hood Sites about flexing your cultural power. Our culture, this African descendant culture of ours. We have morals, values, and principles. We have challenges, issues, and constraints, and we need to have cultural solutions, and we have the time and opportunity to come up with our cultural solutions. But in that, again, we are not local. We are global. We are not domestic. We are universal. Again, like the quote says, they know who you are, but do you know who you are? And this is what her cultural values, morals, and principles has led her to a cultural project with cultural solutions, cultural education, and a cultural legacy that will forever be sustained and ingrained. And this is going to cause cultural growth, cultural progress, and a cultural advancement. Because we have to realize we are more than just one continent. We are all the continents. We are global. We are universal. We are the natural inhabitants of the planet Earth. So, in that, this is why your cultural identity is so powerful and so majestic, because it allows you to identify your cultural constraints, challenges, and issues, and then come up with those creative cultural solutions. Now we get to the cultural advancement, progression, and sustainability, and now we got a cultural legacy, and that just forever compounds the heritage. But it all starts with your identity. We have power. We are not weak. We are not recessive. We are not unnatural. We are not non-native. We are not any of the things that the American white society has instilled in the mental path of many people in America of all groups, including our own. But again, carry and keep your identity with you everywhere you go, because it will lead you to the solutions that we need. It will lead you to the challenges, issues, and constraints that we face as a group. And it also will lead you to the progression and advancement and sustainability that we have to have established for the legacy and our heritage to have everlasting life. And that's what we have today. Cultural identity, which the next step to that is your cultural morals, values, and principles. And the next step after that is the cultural constraints, challenges, and issues. And then the cultural creative solutions. So Dash Harris, again, she could be followed on Instagram at it says here Diaspora Dash, and then she has a website, and the website is called negrodoc.com. negrodoc.com. That is the actual name of the website. And that is officially the end of this news segment. Like I always say, follow the website. Sign up for a free account on the website. Follow in your hood is what I really meant. Sign up for a free account on the website, www.inyourhood.com. Explore every aspect of In Your Hood. We have the true essence of Black history that you can read up on, learn from, get educated. We have world Black news, global Black news. We also have local. And when I say local, I mean to the United States. Black news about different figures that's responsible for our modern life today and have impacted and propelled the different business industries for Black people. And then we also have Black businesses listed, of course, that you may have never seen or heard of. And then more importantly, we have a live streaming television series called Where's Jay Hodge? The Journey in These Streets, streaming live 24/7 on our website and also on our YouTube channel that you can subscribe to, which is J space Hodge, H-A-J-J. And then also, last but not least, Instagram. Follow In Your Hood on Instagram at His Excellency _ J.Hodge. Again, at His Excellency _ J.Hodge. And like I always say, I'm going to get on y'all tomorrow.